Well, joining me now to expatiate more on the EU ban is Dr. Vincent Isegbe. Dr. Vincent Isegbe, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's begin with your reaction to the EU ban on some Nigerian agricultural products, until June 2016, basically owing to a high level of unauthorized pesticide. Please tell us more.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate that Nigeria has to go through this process. There's a suspension of Nigerian beans being exported to the EU. And it's as a result of the high levels of diclovos. It's a chemical pesticide, amongst other pesticides, that contaminated our beans. And it's unfortunate because the EU severally, has indicated that the beans that we exported to them, that's the EU, has high levels of chemicals. It's rather unfortunate that we had to come into this situation. The exporters know that they are not supposed to treat those beans with high levels of those chemicals. Somehow along the line, the beans got to the EU. That's why we have the problem. The Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service were there to certify and issue phytosanitary certificate for any agricultural product that goes out of this country. So it's our primary responsibility to issue the certificate after due certification. Now, the beans that were intercepted with the high levels of diclovos did not pass through quarantine. We have our certification process in place. And following discussions with the EU over this period of time, since February this year, 2015, we had stopped the certification of beans, except they have a confirmatory lab report indicating that those consignment of beans do not have high levels of chemical pesticides.
And you never had any report?
Yes, we never had any report, which means that all the beans that passed through to the EU were illegally sent to the EU. They did not pass through quarantine. Now, quarantine, by virtue of our mandate, we operate at the airports, the seaports, and the land borders. Now, because of government port reform and the 24-hour clearance at the ports, some agencies of government were asked to step aside, while the work will be done outside the ports. But we made our position known to government because of issues like this. Now, beans is not a commodity that is under ban. So naturally, anybody that brings any consignment of beans for export with our phytosanitary certificate will be accepted by custom and cleared by custom for export. This particular batch of beans, alongside the others, did not obtain phytosanitary certificate from quarantine. In the course of our investigation, we realized that the phyto certificate that was accompanying those beans was a forged one. In fact, the importer or the agent went ahead even to forge an accompanying document, I think from the Ministry of Health or something like that. And it's so funny. They said certificate of fineness. No medical organization or veterinary organization gives anything like certificate of fineness. You
have said that there wasn't much concentration on beans because it's not usually banned. But in spite of that, this agency is aware that the EU had issued notifications earlier. So that means the agency should have concentrated on whatever went out and probably looked for avenues of loopholes in which illegal exports might be done. But that did not happen.
Well, there's a reason for that. Now, if you follow the sequence of how we operate at the port, because we are not physically there at the ports, now the port reform indicates that the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service will be called when there's a commodity for inspection. That is on call basis. Now, if we do not receive that call, we won't be there. If for any reason the call comes late and the consignment gets cleared before that time, we won't know what has happened. So we strongly believe that those importations, and because they carry the fake phytosanitary certificate, which they showed to custom, presumably for a genuine document which allowed customs to clear them.
Issued by who?
Well, we don't know how they got it from.
And you have no idea?
We have no idea, because there are two platforms in which we issue the phytocertificates as of now. We have realized that so many exporters or agents who don't want to go through quarantine and want to export these things illegally have found a way of printing these documents. We have instituted an e-platform where we issue electronic certification. So once we do that, the certificate goes directly to the receiving end. So it's difficult to forge. But this particular one, because we're not there to counter whether the certificate is genuine or not, it had free passage. So it's an issue that the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service, the customs, are working on. Quarantine is strategic to every agricultural export and import. So we believe that there should be a reason, good reason, why we are there to do our work. And it's because of our absence, primarily, that some of these lapses are going on. And
you had earlier demanded that your presence be made at the ports?
Yeah, we made representations to government, and I believe they are looking at it.
Why didn't they consider that initially?
Well, you know, there's an international demand on Nigeria that goods are overstaying at our ports. And it's a cogent reason. For international trade, there's no reason why any consignment of goods should stay probably more than 48 hours. In some ports, they clear 24 hours, some less.
Let me understand. Are you saying your presence would have made the time longer?
No, I'm talking generally. I'm trying to say government has a good reason to jettison the number of regulatory agencies at the port. Government has a good reason for doing that. But again, we are saying that in doing that, in complying with the international regulation that we should do 48 hours, minimum 48-hour clearance, we should actually know exactly which of those agencies are primary to what Nigeria wants. At the moment, agro-export trade is primary to our economic survival. And as a result of that, if government had taken an earlier decision, you know, in respect of this, it has now become evident that the absence of quarantine is causing a lot of problems.